It's time to head to the twists and turns. After 2 consecutive oval races, the VOR INDYCAR Series heads again to the virtual Road America for the 4D Racewear Grand Prix. Round 3 of this 14-race season comes after Jesper Orman and IAR dominate the opening 2 rounds, and the championship lead right now, it is clear. Welcome back to the VOR Racing Network. We're your hosts, David Kreutz and Kyle Clenworth, and we'll join you all throughout tonight's racing action. With qualifying just beginning, drivers are setting their fast times at one of the fastest road circuits all throughout the Americas. Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin plays host to a fast track that tonight will be littered with strategy. Expect a fuel mileage race as we do have a fuel limit of 85%. Drivers are going to have to keep in mind that saving will be make or break and do or die for their campaign all night long. 38 laps as the event was here last season, where eventual champion Bruno Miranda came through with the checkered flag, and much like last season, this could be a defining race for the drivers who hope to make their mark in the battle for the championship win. Now, with drivers still taking these times, they're preparing themselves for a long run. Don't expect a break in between. We go from flag to flag when we head to Road America, and that's exactly what's in store tonight. With that being said, Kyle, as we look at the track right now, drivers are still setting those laps, qualifying on the move, and as it stands, our current top driver in the timing sheets, Julian Altena in the number 11, who won the pole last season. Now, we've been discussing the strategy before heading into this race, of course, and we've spoken to a few drivers. What's it going to take here as a key to success with qualifying in mind, as we're now less than 5 minutes away from seeing that green flag?
So I think that there are going to be 3 or 4 primary strategies in this race. You're going to have people who are saving fuel and people who are not saving fuel. So that divides them into 2 categories. If the people who are saving fuel, I think you're going to see them probably run the black tire for the majority of their stints. That allows them to save fuel for the most amount of time. The black tire lasts longer and puts down consistent times. However, it is slow to get up to speed. Then, of everyone who is not saving fuel, they can choose to take reds early or reds all the time until their last stint. So that gives you options 2 and 3. And then you have the wild cards, and this will be option 4. This will be someone who maybe tries to save fuel at the beginning, realizes they're not going to make it, and started on blacks. Then they'll go to reds for the remainder of the race. I think that strategy will be the least common, but if somebody planned to draft to save the fuel that they were needed, and it doesn't materialize, they would probably know about a lap 11 or 12 if their number wasn't met, and that they'll need to abandon ship and switch to the different strategy, the 4th wild card strategy.
Well, you mentioned it as well. Tire is going to be a big deal because we do have a mandatory compound swap in mind. Almost everyone is taking their qualifying times with the alternate compound, with the exception of one, Sheridan Wade in the 54. Everyone else, though, is going to keep it plain and simple. And right now, it's a head-to-head battle between Patrick Zovazzi and Julian Altena for that pole position. Liam O'Sullivan not too far behind, but Liam still has some time to make up, about a half a second off of your top 2 drivers. Alternates are most likely for tonight's race going to be the preferred compound to go most of the distance. But even if you're more comfortable on those alternates, you have to go at least part of a stint on those primaries. If you go for a shorter stint on it or longer, that's all driver's discretion, but you cannot remain on one compound throughout the full race. So that adds a little more difficulty to the way these drivers will approach it. And with respect to that, the long runs are much different from qualifying, Kyle, and I think right now everyone's found the preferred tire for the short run, but the long term is still a major question mark.
Yeah, the hardest part about being on the primary tire, the black tire, is getting up to speed. It takes about 2 laps for the car to warm those tires up and get them to a point where you can stick it in every corner how you'd like. The red tires, however, are almost good to go as soon as you fire off into turn 1 from the start of the race. So if we have leaders who are starting on the black tire and then people on the red tire in row 2, expect aggressive moves early from the second row. If I were in this race, I would run the red tire every single stint until my last stint, and I would cope and hope and defend with all my might with the black tire at the very end.
Well, it looks like right now, of course, no other drivers in the black tires save for Sheridan Wade, and qualifying runs are coming to a close. One more driver on the track in Hugo Gallas, and unless we see a major upset, it looks like we've got ourselves a pole sitter in Patrick Silvazzi. Team VOR, Altena Autosport, going to be second and third. And then you got Aiden Millward there in fourth. And then Matthias Kraus rounding out the top five. So familiar faces overall, but a notable exception in tonight's event. We do not see Jesper Orman, who's won the last two races, the first two races on the schedule, after a victory in Texas, of course, showing that he's got the strength and the prowess on those left-turning circuits. Not here at all tonight, and it's going to be IAR carrying on without him. And of course, they still have multiple drivers. However, their race winner so far not going to be in the field. They got a full podium sweep, as a matter of fact, in Texas. So, of course, that's not going to be possible tonight. In all honesty, maybe another team is going to rise to the occasion. Maybe Altena Autosport, the favorite for the teams, as coming across the line, Gallas 143.528. I think that's it. No other time will be set, and Hugo jumps up to 10th. That being said, our lineup is complete. Hugo gonna finish off that final warm-up lap here. And as such, our starting grid is set up. And since we have a few more seconds anyway, until it's official, Kyle, I'd have to ask, is there anyone who stands out in particular?
Honestly, before the broadcast started, I picked Mark Murphy. I saw him do well in the IIS series here, basically the iRacing INDYCAR series. He's someone I've raced with a lot, and I respect him a lot. He's really good on ovals, and of the road courses in the Americas, this one and Watkins Glen both race the most like an oval in my experience. You have long straightaway speeds, you have harsh braking sections. I would say that some of the turns on this track are comparable to a Milwaukee or to Gateway or New Hampshire. If you've ever raced the IndyCar at those tracks, long, flat, sweeping turns, and then the carousel, which is banked, is also similar to somewhere maybe like Motegi. So those flatter ovals give you some experience that you can lean on when you come to these faster road courses.
And perhaps Murphy in store for a good night, going to be just outside the top five in qualifying. You mentioned the high speeds, and maybe more like an oval than most other road circuits, could give way to some of those oval aces coming back and looking for a bit more. Murphy, very solid when it came down to last race at Texas, but there's a lot of those drivers who succeeded then who are here again today. Let's take a look at your starting grid from top to bottom in tonight's event and see who's where and what's going on. At the top of the board for today's event, it's going to be the number 17 of Patrick Silvazzi with a 141-mile-an-hour lap speed, 141.169. In regards to the time, that is a 1 minute 41 second 0.571 on the decimals, just a few thousandths of a second behind, 41 thousandths to be exact, Julian Altena. The 141.112 lap speed. Liam O'Sullivan then going to be in third, and Aiden Millward going to be position number 4. Overall, the top 5 drivers are within 1 mile an hour of each other in this lap speed. Matthias Kraus about 0.7 of a second off of the fastest time with a 142.3 inside of row 3 and 5th. And Mark Murphy, well, Kyle's pick for the race is up in front and 6th currently with a 140.105 in terms of that speed. Craig Forsyth, who we might see as one of those dark horse contenders, 7th, and then going to be the number 28 machine running in 8th. That is Matthias Kraus. 9th, John Christensen and Hugo Gallas, the final driver to set a time, scored in 10th with 11th place. Then and there going to the number 3 of Cody Metters, then Cameron Bauschin in 12th, 13th. Gary Lovern. 14th spot going to be held by Dan Morera, and Dan Ench going to be 15th with Nate Fields in 16th, and the final driver to take a time, Jordan Evans, 17th. 54 of Sheridan Wade, the only driver to be on the primaries during that session, also the only driver not to set a time. As it stands, 18 drivers in this session, 9 filled rows, and in just a few minutes' time, we are going to see the field get to work. But with that being said, the start-finish line is still empty, and the grid is rolling. That's a look at your starting grid in the 40 Racewear Grand Prix. Now, just a few more turns until we say hello to the green flag action. 38 laps And of course, only one race winner. Last season, Julian Altena started on the front row in a dying attempt to keep that championship battle alive. Ended up in first lap trouble, and Bruno Miranda sailed to victory from that point onward. Tonight, opening up the championship, Jesper Orman, the overall points leader, not with us, and the dominant team might see a little more of a challenge. Altena Autosport, second and third, looking to divide and conquer with their primary forces of Julian Altena and Liam O'Sullivan. But today, the number 17 of Patrick Zovazzi will lead the drivers up the front straightaway hill and bring the field to green. Welcome back to Road America. We are underway in the 40 Racewear Grand Prix.
Something to keep an eye on here. Altena and Murphy are both on reds. The remainder of the top 10 seem to be on blacks as the leaders get together. Silvavi gets hit by O'Sullivan. O'Sullivan's missing the front left wing.
And immediate trouble for Liam O'Sullivan, shades of his teammate last season, and already contact with Craig Forsyth. Liam dropping down the order and rapidly doing so as the primaries of Patrick Zilvazzi get away. Most of the field up in front going to be on that primary tire, and a few exceptions like Julian, although his teammate tried to take the primary compound to no avail, and now his other teammate, John Christensen, coming right there with them. Going to be at a bit of a hornet's nest further on back. O'Sullivan's strategy, of course, going to be dead in the water now, and you got to wonder what can he do to recover, knowing there's still an abundance of time. But this first stint is going to be dreadful. That number 12 team knows it for sure.
Entirely possible he'll pit at the end of this lap just to put his wing back on. You lose so much time every lap with your wing off. It might let him stretch the race to be this one lap stop being this stint for him, so that way he only needs to complete 3 more stops. You're looking at 9 to 11 laps probably on fuel. If you can make it to lap 13, you can cut a stop out.
We'll see right now what Liam, of course, can do. Coming up on him, going to be his teammate John Christensen. Christensen moves up now to the 8th position, and as such, Liam going to fade back that much further. With that damage in the front wing, of course, aerodynamics going to be compromised, and there's really little that he can do right now, save from being almost a roadblock on the circuit. More drivers getting away, and you can see there, John Christensen far out. Cody Meadows now trying to put a little more pressure on, and right there with, just ahead of the company, including Cameron Baustin, you have the number 40 of Dan Marrera running the 4D Racewear equipment, of course. Now looking low on O'Sullivan, Liam has dropped down to 11th from 3rd on the starting grid. However, his teammate in Julian is still up ahead, and as such, there's no battle for the lead just yet, but it's clear Julian's got the pace.
Oh, it's coming. Altena will be making a move here on Silvazzi, probably out of turn 6. These reds fire off so much faster than the blacks. Julian's are up to temp, and Silvazzi probably still needs a few more corners until he can go full tilt. And even then, the reds are probably 3 to 5 tenths a lap faster.
So it looks like Julian just going to have to bide his time and wait. The opportunity is clear, and it's right ahead of him. I don't think there's any reason to panic right now if you're in that number 11 car. Of course, Matthias Kraus going to be right behind, but not all too much pressure given what's going on here. The majority of these fields, of course, getting themselves set up and readying in for the long run. These drivers are not going to be getting that full course yellow flag unless we see something truly catastrophic, but right now everyone's spread apart to these small 3 or 4 car groupings, so expecting to go the full distance. That is the end goal. Now, let's talk a little bit more about that strategy, because not only do we have to see that compound swap, but additionally, we are most likely, unless someone stretches it perfectly, not going to see the 2-stopper put into effect. It's just far too much time with that 85% cap for it to be possible for any driver here. The 3-stopper looks to be the most likely outcome here, if it's even possible based on proper saving. We were talking to Mark Murphy, or Kyle, you got the most info out of it, that 13 laps would be the perfect run for any driver here. As you see Craig Forsyth passed there by Matthias Strauss. Now, 13 laps, is that feasible even if these drivers aren't fully saving, or do you have to commit to it from the very beginning for it to even be possible?
Yeah, the 13 lap number, completing lap 13 and pitting at the beginning of lap 14 requires you to save every single lap in map 5, which means that you're going to be running slower down the straights, and you probably need a drafting partner when you're doing that. That would give you a number where you run just to 14. On the full fuel tank for the IIS, you could get to 15, which is, 18.5 gallons, which is well more than they have here. So you're looking at saving about an extra 3 gallons there over the stint to get one less lap.
And meticulous fuel saving will play into the dividends for the successful drivers and, of course, could mean a failure for others. Right now, at the front of the field, Julian not necessarily putting all that effort into getting up to Patrick Zilvazzi, and we have mentioned alternates should have the advantage, especially right now as they're not burned off. But it appears perhaps getting into the toe of the driver ahead for Julian is the most important factor now. We're going to pull up driver telemetry here for the viewers so they can see what's going on. Julian evidently, of course, going to be on the throttle, but not necessarily chasing after Zilvazzi. Staying in a good position right now. I'm going to be towed right up the front straightaway, up the most elevation difference in the entire circuit, up the hill, right by the start-finish line, and here we go again. At 6th gear right now for Julian, getting up to about 11,400 revs a minute and gently letting off. Staying in 6th just a little bit longer to go for another lap here. Not necessarily signs of extreme fuel saving, of course, staying in the 2nd spot for that good track position. I think it's clear right now the intentions for the front runners are not to go for aggressive passing necessarily, but instead bide your time and look toward the future.
Not only that, if you can kind of subsidize going slower in the corners with the tow you get from the car in front of you on the straightaways, it can allow you to save or nurse your red alternate compound tires longer. Basically, what you're doing is you're trading 2 or 3 miles an hour in the corner for 5 or 6 miles an hour down the straight in the draft. If Julian were ahead of Patrick, he would have to push harder to keep the lead, versus you can kind of use a little less tire, even though you're in dirty air, and save a little bit of fuel while you're at it to conserve those alternate tires.
And for the time being, I think Julian doing real good at that compensation game. The times are almost identical. That time by, Julian was faster by 9 1/1000ths of a second. So it's really a minimal difference. And in all honesty, these drivers in their first 3-4 laps have been almost exact replicas each and every time. Julian most recently ran his fastest lap. Patrick is only about 2 100ths off of his quick time. So right now, tire wear isn't all too major, but of course expecting that fall off by the time we get to the end of this first fuel run. Zilvazzi, this time by, of course, keeping things strong and steady at the head of the field, leading by 4/10 at the line yet again. A few other battles going to be going on further back, and you can see Cody Meadows right here with Matthias Strauss going to pull down to the inside, coming through the main straightaway, and it looks like Meadows should have the advantage into this first turn. That he does. Cody getting there clearly. Majority of the field is still around, at least a driver or two to fight. Of course, Liam O'Sullivan right now, the only exception with major damage. And Cameron Bauschian going to replicate that move, and he's going to take the 86 right around Sheridan Wade. Wade moves back to 13th. Cameron gets up to 12th.
Rouse and Millward are sticking a wing out, making Altana think twice before going into turn 5 there. Just kind of making them look in your mirror, making them think you're making a move, trying to keep you on your toes so you don't get too relaxed here in this conga line we have. All behind Patrick Zilvazzi. I'm interested to see if these red tires will continue to put up good lap times after lap 5. I think this is probably the last good lap for Reds. I want to see how badly they fall off from lap 6 and onward. If it's not that bad, I would expect a lot of people to maybe pit around lap 9 or lap 10 and put Reds on again. However, if they fall off way worse than that, you'll pit and take the blacks faster than, stretching out to lap 9.
Now, notably, Matthias Kraus has gained ever so slightly on the drivers ahead of him. The gap has shrunk by about 3 or 4/10ths of a second between he and Julian here. So if there is due to be some tire wear for those Reds, extreme tire wear that is from here on out, expecting that to take hold for the majority of the field as you look on up. The leaders, once again, going to come across that strike with Zilvazzi in full control. Not full tilt necessarily, but right now drivers spreading themselves apart as Kraus looks a little bit closer, just enough to look back in that rear view as you mentioned, Kyle. But Julian, very comfortable for the time being in the runner-up position. Another battle going to be taking place. John Christensen just barely getting by around the outside on Dan Morera, and Dan gonna make it close, but just not enough to make it stick. Marrero once again fades back now to 11th, as Christensen's gonna make it 2 top 10s for the Altona Autosport team. Their third driver, of course, 18th and last for the time being. Now Marrero looking to go for that crossover and take him back around the outside. Christensen gonna have to stay wide and gets forced a little bit further out, but keeps the position. Much to the chagrin, of course, of Marrero, who's going to have to pull himself back together, losing a lot of momentum through one of the more intricate portions of the circuit here. It looks like it, once again, on the way. Christensen currently going to find himself in 10th. Now maybe eyes on the drivers ahead, such as Matthias Strauss and company, who are now all on their own. No major packs from outside the top 5 down to the tail end, where drivers like Jordan Evans currently lie.
Murphy's coming under fire from Craig Forsyth here. I think Murphy's been a little less kind to his reds than Altena has, although Altena also has Kraus on his rear attenuator. We have some great battles about to shape up here up in the top 5 for 2 or 3 of our positions.
Now taking a watch on Mark Murphy, you see Craig Forsyth and, of course, Cody Meadows also coming up. IAR, of course, not having their flagship man in Jesper Orman, and that's been, of course, the troublesome part, having to deal with being alone for Murphy. He said to us, not much of a road racer, but so far putting up a good effort, and he's seeing the battle right behind him. Further distraction, which is going to allow him to hold on to the positions he's got. Craig Forsyth quickly passed there by Cody Meadows. Cody having a good day overall and making quite a few gains. As it stands, up 4 positions from where he started, 11th to 7th. And maybe up next could be Mark Murphy if he stays there in the tow. Meadows has been one of the more aggressive drivers and perhaps going to play to his advantage right now, but you have to wonder, Kyle, is that a sustainable strategy, or is it going to end up causing him to fall back down the order by the time we hit the second half?
I don't know. He's also on the reds and has been kicking his rear end out, looking for grip out of most of these corners, and he's still keeping pace. Maybe the other drivers aren't abusing their reds enough. You know, sometimes if you love a tire a little harder, it lasts a little longer. You know, they like to be at a certain temperature, and if you keep it there by working a little harder or driving a little harder every lap, you get a little more out of the tire, even though you're not driving, quote, as clean, end quote, right? So I hope that it doesn't bite Meadows here. I like to see drivers giving it their all, putting their right foot down. He's definitely been doing that, moving forward, going the right direction. So we'll see if his strategy of being aggressive pays off.
And aggression right now getting him up a few spots, but of course, pit strategy due to come. We're more than halfway into this first stint here and expecting that window to open up about lap 9 or 10 for most drivers. Now, keep in mind, Liam O'Sullivan did indeed go down to pit road and now is making gains on Nate Fields and the very tail end of the field. However, of course, losing a lot of time relative to the rest of those he has been competing around. The leaders have gotten away from him, and even though he's not a lap down, and it'll be very unlikely he goes one down without another mistake, O'Sullivan is stranded. And what could have been a great points day for the Altona Autosport team, well, they now find themselves lonely at the tail end of the field, and the only thing that they can do, try to gain on Nate Fields and maybe Jordan Evans to make up a few spots and salvage a top 15 finish. That's, of course, at the tail end of the field. The rest of these drivers have a little bit of company, and just ahead right now, you're going to see Aiden Millward making a move on Julian Altona. Julian going to drop back to 4th, and now Matthias Kraus getting that second spot. We're beginning to see the alternate compound wear and tear, and now there's no red compound in the podium. The primaries are on top.
Not only are they on top, but it looks like Kraus has saved his better than Silvazzi, even though Silvazzi's had fresh, clean air on the nose of his IndyCar the entire run. And don't look too far back behind Altena. You still have Cody Meadows on the move. He's right behind Mark Murphy now, right on his tailgate. So, you know, I think whatever he's done to keep his reds in shape is working. I think everyone else should check their notebook if they've got a spotter who's watching the broadcast. Be like, do what Cody Meadows did. Run those reds harder. They don't seem to be any worse for the wear.
In all honesty, the Reds, they benefit, of course, from being the quicker compound, so perhaps Meadows reaping the benefits of just simply using them for what they're meant to do. And right now, of course, paying dividends, getting up into what's currently running as the 6th position, up to potentially the top 5 if all goes well here. Of course, Mark Murphy been leading him around for several laps now, and Meadows not having a way around that 69 team just yet. Putting up a nice fight, though, and with Julian slowly but surely falling back. Maybe a chance here to get another few spots out of it. Andres Eek in the chat room saying that Kraus looks strong. That he does. Matthias up to the race lead and getting by Patrick Zilvazzi, who was leading the draft train for the majority of the night so far. That is no longer the case, and instead Kraus deciding to pull ahead, and he waited for the better part of that stint to get a chance to do so. Now he's got the race lead. Zilvazzi fades back to 2nd. Not a major change, but that is a big deal in regards to how Zilvazzi is going to approach the rest of this stint, maybe trying to save more just before he heads down to pit road.
It may be too late to save any sizable amounts of fuel, but if you were sitting at 1.7 laps left in the tank, coming here, like at this point of the stint, it's possible that you can get that third of a lap, so you can complete 1 extra lap. You're not saving a whole lap of fuel, but you're saving a fraction of a lap that allows you to go 1 lap further from your initial tank. This happens a lot in enduro racing, where maybe you'll back up for 3 or 4 laps in the middle or at the end of your stint, just to make it to your time requirement for your team drivers in endurance racing. It's something you see a lot.
Now coming very close to that point of entering pit road here. Will the fractions matter? That's the big question. This time by, looks like none of the leaders opting to go through. We're expecting lap 10, 11, 12 to be the real sweet spot. Again, if lap 13 is feasible for these drivers, that would be the best case scenario. Now into the double digits in regards to laps. Currently, Matthias Kraus up and away. Overall, the battles have been simmering down for the most part. Most drivers separate by more than half a second here. Perhaps now Dan Morera making a move and catching up to Matthias Strauss. We'll see these two drivers in their own bundle, and Morera got his way around John Christensen. They were fighting each other for a while there, but eventually Morera got his way, coming down what would be the DRS zone for the Formula One cars. These drivers, additionally, and we have not mentioned it, they have the opportunity to use the push to pass. Most drivers have not, though. It looks like only a select few drivers have even used it once, and Morera, looks like this time by, he made the pass happen regardless of push-to-pass use. He's now going to make his way up into 9th. Drivers choosing not to use the push-to-pass, and maybe in large part due to the fuel situation. Because, of course, going quicker, you're burning more fuel. You don't want to do that, especially when these first few stints are going to be all about feeling out the strategy and figuring out what is right to do and when it's right to be aggressive. Most drivers are laying off the push-to-pass button, but we're still seeing passes all throughout the circuit. Of the top 5, 6, 7 drivers, a very stable spot right now.
Yeah, we've got a peloton here at the front of the field. You know, everybody's trying to ride the draft of the driver in front of them. Very single file, very orderly. I really want to see if anybody can make it to that lap 13, completing lap 13. So they've got to go 3 more circuits from here, 3 full more circuits. I don't think that Kraus or Silvazzi will be able to do that with the amount that they've led with the pace that they've shown. However, Altena, Millward, Meadows, Murphy, and Forsyth, they've all been well within a long line of cars, and each car in front of you breaks more air. It makes your fuel number better. So look for those third on back drivers to maybe go an extra lap or half lap. That may help them cut or shave a stop off of the required amount of fuel for the next race.
11 laps in, out of 38. Looking at these drivers in the tow right now, particularly those chasing after Matthias Kraus. Will they decide to make their way in, go to pit road, or is it time, of course, to go for one last lap? That remains the question in the air. The alternate compound has been fading back. The primaries control the top 3, and it looks like perhaps we might see some drivers go for the compound switch now. Others might go for what they're comfortable with a little while longer. Time by, making our way through that final sector up the hill is the call to make that hard right turn. Looks like Matthias Kraus going to be the first driver with the opportunity to make You make that move. Nobody else, though, directly signaling in just yet here. And, of course, looking now, most drivers spread apart. Don't think we're going to be seeing passes for the next few laps unless there's an incident here. But with the exception of that last, of course, incident we saw on lap 1, everyone's remained relatively calm here. Zovazzi coming right back up to the tail on Matthias Kraus. They're separate now by only about a quarter of a second. Kraus still holding the advantage. Gonna hold forward to try to lead on the way out here and coming across the line. It looks like he'll stay on the circuit as we move on to lap number 12. One driver goes in. That's the ever-aggressive Cody Meadows, and he's gonna follow Aiden Millward. Pit road is open, and for the first time all night long, it is busy. Dan Marrera gonna come in, and as Hugo Galez goes by, a few other competitors in the mid-pack make their way through. Matthias Strauss right there with Dan Marrera, and as we previously mentioned, Aiden Millward and Cody Meadows, the first 4 drivers down and in.
So these would be the first drivers on the full push strategy. These drivers did not try to save fuel or any amount of reasonable fuel to cut a stop out. And it looks like Millward has opted to put blacks on again. And I bet you anything that Cody Meadows, oh no, he also put blacks on. So no reds here for any of the drivers that pit. Barrera, Meadows, and Millward all on blacks. However, Matthias Strauss is on reds. So let's see if he can use those to vault himself back ahead of Dan Marrera.
And the team Watson 28 right now just behind Dan Marrera, who's the only driver out and about representing a fully 40 Racewear paint scheme. It's Marrera, Craig Forsyth representing our title sponsor for today's event. And once again, we'd like to thank 40 Racewear for their participation all season long, supporting the INDYCAR Series you see here on the VOR Racing Network. Dan Marrera right now back in 9th, and Cody Meadows goes for what looks to be a full spin. It's a 360 and nothing else. He'll lose several positions, looks to be 2 or 3, now fades back to 14th as Strauss has a problem, and another driver, the cold tires, no grip, and Strauss is going to fade back. Cody Meadows was the first to spin. Then immediately after came the 28 of Strauss, and we're going to take a look back here and see what happened, although I think it's pretty clear, no experience with these colder tires, and we see trouble as it looks like Cody Meadows going to be sliding down and in, no other contact, and of course no caution called. Multiple instances of drivers getting loose there.
Just a 45-degree slide for Meadows, but Strauss got the worst of it. He went off in the grass and trying to get back on the track, ate the barrier. He has retired his car. But one thing to note there, David, is that Liam O'Sullivan has caught these drivers. He's looking to pass these all for position. So Cody Meadows, Nate Fields, all right in front of him. He had P3 pace at the start of this race. He's on reds right now, and he is charging. I would see Liam is going to be in good shape here to recover to a top 10 finishing position.
And talking about those speeds in regards to laps, O'Sullivan is up there right now, and he looks to be rapid quick compared to the majority of the drivers he's around. Liam is in 10th right now. And even though we mentioned he had a lot of trouble from that first lap, and we wondered, could he even salvage a top 15? The cycle going in his favor right now, but you have to remember, he's on a different pit stop strategy, so he will have to come down to pit road eventually here, and he's coming closer to that number earlier than anyone else. So as it stands, O'Sullivan going to find himself up inside that top 10 and looking next on Cody Meadows. That time by quicker than Meadows, and of course quicker than those who had struggles, and unfortunately one driver down in regards to Matthias Strauss. But Liam right now looking better than he has for the majority of the night. His teammate battling for the lead will battle up in the pit road. Now it's going to be Altena and Zovazzi making their way in, and they're the final drivers in this leading bundle to go through. They're also going to bring with them Craig Forsyth. They made it 13 laps. They might be in the best position to go for what is a 2-stop strategy at end of day.
Excuse me, sorry. So you'll be able to complete lap 14 here. You'll pit again on 28. 28 to 30 is only 10 more. So yeah, they're only going to pit once more after this.
And the question becomes, did they go long? And that is, if of course possible, the preferential strategy. Now Zovazzi going to be on the way, gets the clear-cut advantage over his rivals at a pit road. And here comes Matthias Kraus. Kraus will just barely get the race lead. But of course, he's got himself slightly older rubber. Coming out on primary compound, it's going to be Patrick Zovazzi. You look back to Julian, now going to be on the primaries as well, and Craig Forsyth is going to be the only one of which all the alternates here. So starting to see that switch over to the primaries for a majority of these drivers. There's a bundle from about Liam O'Sullivan down to Dan Ench, which is 10th to 14th, that are on the reds. Kraus in the primaries lead the way, 14 laps in of 38.
Yeah, I want to give a big shout there to Patrick Silvazzi. He completed all of those 13 laps after leading the first 7 or 8 in clean air. So he did a phenomenal job managing the fuel there, that stint. If it allows him to cut this to a 2-stopper, that is well-deserved strategy and well-deserved discipline on that right foot, knowing when to use the right maps and when to cede the lead to Matthias Kraus to follow him and use his wake to his advantage.
And now Zovazzi going to find himself firmly ahead of Aiden Millward and Julian Altena. Aiden right now, that number 67, in a very good spot to hold on to the podium. Julian 4th, and we got to wonder, can Julian pull it back to Millward? Aiden's big disadvantage right now with respect to this battle is the fact he's on older rubber, 2 laps older. So that's not a major difference maybe in regards to pace, but he's going to have to come down to pit road most likely, unless he stretches it very long, a little bit earlier than the drivers he's fighting against. It's clear right now that Aiden has that pace to compete up in front. What can he do with it? That's the big what if. Mark Murphy right now facing a little bit of pressure from the 18 of Hugo Gallas. And Murphy right now going to be running in 7th, so maybe losing a spot or 2. It could be 3 now. Hugo going down, cutting deep, and it looks like the number 69 machine, no choice but to stay high. Let Hugo get the pass.
Liam O'Sullivan has pit for his second stop. He is off cycle due to the damage he received early. Let's see if he chooses the reds again or if he's going to finish out here on the blacks. I'll let you know.
And now he's going to be up on the weight jacks there, so we'll see what happens with O'Sullivan. He'll drop down the order once again, and now going to find himself on pit road, dropping beyond the confines of the top 15. Should be able to stay ahead of Jordan Evans no matter what, though, Kyle. And as he's on his way right now, what's the call for the number 12?
He's got reds on again, full attack and full off track. He took them out into the gravel, just kind of test the pea gravel, see if it's up to soup standard today. Getting his seconds for lunch, I guess. But he's back on track and he's going to look to make up some time here on the faster compound.
And O'Sullivan's going to be on the way, and you can see him full push at about 175 miles an hour before making his way in, and now just trying to get that warmth in the tire. Does not want to end up like Strauss, who of course went off track not once but twice and eventually had to retire the car. So O'Sullivan is effectively locked in with a top 15 finish for that reason. Goal right now, if there's anything to salvage, would be a top 10. And although he's alone for the time being, he should perhaps have the pace to get up to Dan Ench and Sheridan Wade. Not all hope is lost for O'Sullivan if he remains quick from this point onward, which isn't impossible. Just going to take a load of work from this point on. Now it looks like Hugo Gallas and Mark Murphy are still close, but Hugo's gotten away, and overall the majority of the field getting themselves spread once again. How about that for the number 69 and Mark Murphy now running in 8th here, and maybe there's an opportunity for him to stay with Hugo Gallas, but overall Gallas getting away. Of all the drivers inside the top 10, we only have 2 on the alternate compounds. 5th, Craig Forsyth, and then you go down to 10th in John Christensen. So very few drivers up at the front of the field going to be using those red walled Firestones here. The preference is in. The primaries for now are chosen by the leaders.
We're going to have a nice little 3-car battle here for third between Millward, Altena, and Forsyth. Forsyth at the rear here on the reds. It could be, I've been watching, Altena seems to be backing each corner up a lot, as if he just doesn't want to pressure Millward under braking. I don't know if that's a tire conservation strategy or a fuel conservation strategy, but it may allow Forsyth to capitalize here, especially in one of the deep braking zones.
And Craig Forsyth remaining right behind here on Julian Aluminum buffer, about a tenth or two between each of these drivers in this fight, all giving each other just enough room. Craig Forsyth gonna lie back, and you mentioned Julian backing up the corners there. Looks like now starting to pull a little bit further away from Forsyth, and they'll go right up the hill yet again, and in control still Aiden Millward. Aiden with the oldest rubber of these three drivers battling, and 2 extra laps of age as they come up on Patrick Zovazzi. We'll see how much longer Aiden can hold these guys off here. Shouldn't be much an issue if he doesn't get forced in the mistake or make an unforced error. Gotta wonder if Aiden's primaries will end up wearing off quicker, given the fact he's got a few more laps on.
I think his tires will hold up just fine. It's not like he's been up on the tailpipes of Silvazzi, running through a lot of aero wash or pushing through the corners very hard. But they are chewing into that lead to second, and I think that's Silvazzi, again, just saving fuel every lap so he can hit that 13-lap threshold for here in stint 2.
And the big priority for Zovazzi looking to be that fuel strategy. Once again, he had himself a fantastic run of 12 to 13 laps, exactly what was necessary, of course, try to go for that 2-stopper. Julian, of course, played it safe as well. However, Julian now finding himself in 4th, and I'd have to imagine this is one of the tracks that Julian thinks that this entire team is stronger at relative to most others. Of course, he grabbed the pole position last season, and much like his teammate Liam O'Sullivan, he found trouble in that race and fell out of contention quickly. Bruno Miranda was able to lead basically every other race from there, or rather every other lap from there, and he kept himself in a dominant race-winning streak, eventually coming through with the championship at end of day. Now, Julian, of course, finding himself inside the top 5 has not lost all too much, but I'd have to imagine the podium is the goal here, especially being right there, maybe not on the attenuator of the 67, but remaining very close. And it's going to be a tight battle between these two from here on out, and you gotta wonder, when will Julian try to go aggressive? Maybe not even in the stint. Perhaps the window for aggression is the next run after we go down to pit road for what should be the final time.
Liam O'Sullivan is getting aggressive right now coming into Canada corner, thinking about going 3 wide with a couple of other back markers. I think they get by Dan Ench okay as he follows, let's see here, Sheridan Wade through Thunder Valley.
And keeping our eyes on Dan Ench as it stands in that 15 spot and making that move. Liam O'Sullivan getting a spot and now looking to go for another. Liam right on the back end of the 54 team, and this should be a quick and easy pass, dropping low, and Wade can have no choice but to keep it right up high. Side by side right now, it's going to be, of course, O'Sullivan making the move on the red compound, and Wade remains on the primaries. Quick and easy. That's Liam O'Sullivan now up to 13th, and the next driver for him would be Gary Lovern, who's several seconds ahead, but so were the drivers he just passed in Ench and, of course, Sheridan Wade. So maybe it's not unrealistic that Liam gets another pass under green.
Yeah, he is so much faster than these drivers running down the order. Maybe just looking to survive to score some points when maybe this series focuses on ovals, right? So, you know, do well in the ovals and just survive at the road courses. But Liam's looking to pick up every point he can here. I guess that's the benefit of having your trouble early, right? You have the whole race to recover.
And even though it might not be the recovery he'd want with no cautions in mind, still making up spots, and that is the end goal, recovery of everything he can get and salvaging each and every point. O'Sullivan got a top 5 finish at this track last season, so it looks unlikely he'll replicate that, but again, top 10 still could be in store if Liam, of course, plays his cards right. Now, up at the front of the field, a few more battles still persisting. The one we've been watching, of course, the battle for 3rd, Millward, Altena, and Craig Forsyth. They look a bit more spread out now. However, it looks like in the past few laps, Aiden has been gaining more and more to your second-place driver. Now, maybe not to the leader right now. It looks like Matthias Kraus a bit more aggressive than all others. And a bit of a wiggle there from Aiden, but he should be still making ever so slightly time back up there on Patrick Zovazzi, who's been more and more strict about that tire saving all throughout the race. Ever since giving away the lead, that has been the goal and the top priority, getting to hit those numbers each and every time by, as we are within 10 laps of that next pit cycle, expecting drivers to come in at about 7 or 8 laps. If they choose to go along once again here, the window might open within 5 for the majority of this field.
Yeah, I think Kraus has no prospect of making it to like lap 27 or 28. I'd expect Kraus in around lap 26. Silvazzi and El Tena will probably try to get to 28, and if they can, to 29, and then they can just run the reds hard with no thought of being saved on the last run.
And this grouping up at the front of the field, largely on primaries, expecting to see, for a few of these drivers, still one last compound swap. And you mentioned here, a lot of these drivers at the front of the field now taking their time on the primaries, though. I gotta wonder, Kyle, I'm not quite sure whether or not we're to see these drivers switch back to the alternates, maybe some of which are going to try to go for the primaries to run it a little bit longer if they choose to come in for the undercut. That's still a big what if, though, because if these drivers choose not to go for the undercut, there's...
So Silvazzi has to take the reds. He hasn't been on reds. Silvazzi has to take the reds.
And as for the rest of the field, though, there's still a choice. But Patrick, of course, you mentioned it, he has to make that move. Though I'd wonder, it's most likely he goes and sticks by his plan, of course, of running long. But we could see some drivers perhaps take that undercut with the few laps we got remaining.
Perhaps. I just think that anyone who's in the fuel save mode can't really afford to undercut, because then you can't make it on one more stop. It would be anybody who has it's basically that wild card strategy, right? They, on their dash, it says that they're not going to make that fuel number they've been aiming for every lap. Maybe they missed it by a couple of tenths in a row. A couple of tenths on an MPG here. The track is 4 miles long. If you miss your 4 MPG number by 1/10, that's 10% of the track that you did not make on that gallon that you were trying to make. That's a whole turn, a turn and a half, basically. Road America, for some reason, says they have, 14 turns? It's really 12, right? So if you think of each turn as a 10th of MPG, that's about right, considering how long the straights are. So it's as if you have to go a whole extra corner and then the enter and exit of that corner on the same amount of gas, which cannot happen if you miss it by even a 10th for just one lap.
And right now, Mark Murphy going to give it away to the aggressive Cody Meadows. Meadows is a driver who really hasn't been too concerned with saving those extra tenths. I think right now he's just looking to get those positions. He's 3 up on his qualifying spot, just got by Murphy, and once again going to make a quick pass here as we are about exactly halfway. We just made it past that point 2 laps ago. 18 laps remain. Dan Morera has made his way up into the battle here for third, and we haven't discussed all too much of Dan because in all honesty he hasn't been up in this front-running fight, but now he's looking low on Craig Forsyth and quickly makes the move. Morera came from 14th at the bottom half of the grid and nearly in the final 3 rows, and all of a sudden he's up here in the 5th position. It's the best that Dan has looked all race long, and he just got by his 40 Racewear teammate. Maybe we got ourselves a driver a little more unexpected as a dark horse for a podium position if he can keep up with Julian.
Yeah, so Dan ran his first stint on the reds, and I think he might feel much more comfortable on the blacks. He's made up a ton of time on the leaders here this stint. I could see him easily putting himself in the conversation for podium here.
So Morera makes that first pass. That's the first step to getting into that podium. Julian still just behind Aidan Millward, and as you can see here, within a half a second of these drivers, Patrick Silvazzi has lost time to Millward yet again. The gap between them about a half a second flat. And Millward now going to be in the tire tracks here, looking for an opportunity to stay right behind and perhaps get in the tow as they run once again up the front straightaway. A little bit of weaving and bobbing there from the 67, but nobody directly behind, so it shouldn't mean all too much here. 17 laps remaining, and from second down to 6th, we've got ourselves 5 drivers still battling amongst each other to settle out the majority of the front running in the field. These positions are still up in the air. It's a big toss-up, and Dan Morera gets up to 5th, although I've got to wonder what can Morera do in regards to fuel saving here, because he's come out of nowhere and he had to make up several seconds to even get to this point. And with regard to that aggression, of course, he cut through several seconds to get up to the guys he's around, and now he got one driver especially slow. That's Aidan Millward! And Millward is destroyed.
He has retired.
Aiden Millward.
Come. Oh. Go ahead.
Can you believe it, Kyle? Let's run through it and figure out what happened.
It looks like his front right suspension just broke like a mechanical failure. It's either the worst netcode I've ever seen with Patrick Silvazzi in front of him, or there was literally a mechanical failure on his PC which caused the damage. I have never seen anything like that.
And we might have thought it was getting loose into the corner, but you're right. Looking back, Millward just had a freak, perhaps a hardware failure in the real world, like his wheel. We're going to take a look back one more time on board here, and looking at it, 6-year full
suspension brakes. The suspension brakes right about the 2 brake marker.
That looks like a wheel, like a physical disconnection of the wheel. When the wheels disconnect here in iRacing, when either USB unplugged or something of that sort, it will go hard left or right. So I think, looking at that footage, something happened with the wheel connection and he got destroyed as a result. That is not necessarily a driver error.
Yeah,
that could have been a software or hardware problem, but it's going to take him out of the race and destroy a podium for the 67 team. Millward killed perhaps by a wheel disconnection.
I rode on board with the cockpit. His hands did full left input. It looked like the suspension broke from a trailing angle, but it was actually steering input, and it was not human input.
And that is a heartbreaker, of course, for the 67 crew. And that's something you see so infrequently. You just got to wonder what happened there. And for Aiden Millward, who was running so well, keeping up with the podium sitters, and it didn't even look like he was burning up his rubber that much. He seemed to be set for a perfect opportunity to go in, get himself a top 5, and continue contending for that podium. And yet, disaster strikes. That moves Julian up to 3rd, and that's one spot that's taken out of the air. Now you can see Cody Meadows coming up on another driver. That is Gary Lovern. And Meadows right now trying to make that move. Keep in mind, Liam O'Sullivan has gotten up to 9th now as a result of the attrition we're beginning to see. Meadows going to be swinging back and forth right now, but Lovern holds fort in the top 10, goes very wide here, and going to shut the door through the apex. He knows Cody's one of those drivers who's looking for any opportunity and tries to pounce, and he's going to get hard on the brakes and lock it up.
Maybe his eyes got bigger than his dinner plate there. Tried to run a little bit hard into Corvette corner under the underpass and gave Gary a break instead of taking his rear wing out. Just a little bit of lockup and a couple of tenths lost.
Meadows now going to be a little bit off of the groove there for the past few quarters we've been watching. Cody's going to drop back about a half second. Gary Lovern holds fort there in 10th. Liam O'Sullivan for the Team VOR drivers. We were surprised, of course, to see that O'Sullivan got by one of his teammates in Gary Lovern and is now up there in the single digits. Dan Moreira has fallen back, mind you. He was up there inside the top 5 fight. No longer the case, currently running in 8th. Coming across the line this time.
Dan gave up on the fuel number. Dan put on reds again, so he's going to be doing 3 stops instead of 2. He didn't feel like he could make it on fuel.
And we'll see now how it plays out for Moreira as he gets back on the way. Another driver who just went down and in, that was Hugo Gallas in the number 18. And now Gallas gets back on the way, and he's going to find himself behind Liam O'Sullivan. So now we're starting to see some drivers bailing out on their strategy. And now it's time to perhaps throw on the wild card mode for those who haven't committed. And for those who have, just 2 or 3 laps more until they come down to pit row for the final time. Kraus and company. Matthias Kraus, though, has a 7, now 8-second lead. He's in a really good position to go all the way.
If he can get the fuel to go that far. He did not go as far as Silvazzi the first stint.
And it looks like now Kraus is going to come down and in this time by after a total of 10 completed laps. Matthias making his way uphill ever so slowly, and it's got to be dreadful here, seeing that he gives the lead back to Silvazzi. Now, Kraus is going to make that statement, going in for a quick undercut. I don't think Silvazzi is going to go and try to respond immediately, though. I still think he's going to be dead set on what would be the preferred strategy, going long here and setting him up to be safe for that final short stint.
Yeah, Silvazzi will complete this lap and one more full additional lap. And then he'll be good to finish on the same length stint. If Silvazzi, for whatever reason, saved enough to go 2 additional laps, he could full push on the Reds at the end of the race. However, I don't believe that's in the cards for him.
Now for Patrick, 2.5 up on Julian Altena. Julian a little bit further back now, and then Craig Forsyth tentatively rounding out the podium. 14 laps remaining here in the dying laps here on the 40 Racewear Grand Prix. We'd like to thank the viewers who have stopped by so far, and Andreas Eek and Elian Kampmeyer. A little bit more support now for Julian, who runs in second again. And your front row, awful familiar to what we're seeing, is the top 2 right now. Of course, Kraus, the final driver we have to account for. Matthias is currently running in net 4th position. A few more drivers have made that move down to pit road, and you're about to see the mass exodus in these coming laps. 14 laps remaining. So if these drivers go down to pit road from this point onward to the very end, it's very likely this is it. A few drivers going for the 3-stopper, but to succeed and try to fight for the race win, 2-stop is the way to go. And now, coming across the line again, Patrick Silvazzi stays on the circuit. Julian, the choice is staying on the track. Craig Forsyth, more of the same. And of course, Kraus behind him in 4th, also going to remain on the track here. So 13 remaining. And it looks like now these drivers will be locking themselves in to go for the 2-stopper.
Yeah, so these top 3 have basically locked themselves a podium unless they do something terribly wrong with their fuel mileage here on this last lap or in their last stint. If they push too hard or use push to pass, trying to get to second or the win, they could run out coming to the checkers. Or if, for whatever reason, they kept auto fuel on and they get shorted fuel here at the end, that could also be an issue. Hopefully, they can all execute well and bring it home with the position they've secured, using a diligent light right foot to get better economy than the rest of the field.
Keeping our eyes peeled on who's the next up here. Looks like Hugo Gallas coming up again with Liam O'Sullivan. Liam has gotten up into 6th all of a sudden here, and of course, he still has one more pit stop to make no matter what happens. Will most likely go in within the next 3 or 4 laps. Now, he's made a big recovery, but I can't imagine now he's going to be saving all too much. His eyes are set and get it down to pit road one final time. He should be good to go whatever his next pit stop is, and he's coming up on a driver going a little bit wide. I don't believe that is Dan Marrero right now, coming up perhaps some lap traffic.
It's Nate Fields.
Yep, Nate Fields, the lapper, who's going to get right by. Very few drivers off the lead lap here, Kyle.
Pit.
What's up?
Oh, Silvazzi's pitting.
And Patrick going to make his way in now. The number 17, not going to be joined by Julian, it appears, until now. So Altena comes in. So does Craig Forsyth. The top 3 all come in at once. And it looks like they're going to have 12 more laps to go from this point onward with Patrick Silvazzi in control. Now we got to keep our eyes peeled on Matthias Kraus and see how much time he makes up on this run.
He should have a 4 or 5 second lead over Silvazzi once this is said or done. However, unless he does a miracle saving fuel here, he will need to stop again.
And so now Kraus going to have himself a substantial lead. Coming out first going to be Patrick Silvazzi. And here comes Julian, then Craig Forsyth. So Kraus is going to be up and ahead here. Has about 13, of course, laps to go for this entire stint. He's got a lead of 8.5 seconds here. I think now, Kyle, if he plays the strategy game right in regards to saving, this could be almost a guaranteed victory, but he still has to be careful coming up on a lapper of Dan Ench, and he gets much slower so as to not make any contact.
Yeah, being conservative here is probably in your best interest. You don't want to throw a race away after you've done so well managing up to this, 5/8 point, or I guess 6/8 points, 2/3, right? Whatever, math. But Altena, Forsyth, and Silvazzi all put on reds there. So it'll be interesting to see who can conserve them the best here through the closing stage of this race.
Right now, Patrick Silvazzi going to be 10 seconds back. Dan Marrero going to be net second as it stands, and Marrero going to find himself taking that big risk and trying to throw something out in the air. Several seconds ahead of a majority of his competition here, and as it stands for that number 17, the question becomes, can Silvazzi get back to Morera and then go from there with such a gap in mind. 11 seconds to leader Kraus. Morera is going to have to be especially careful, and I honestly don't quite know whether or not he will be able to make it all the way. If he does, he's definitely going to have to shave off a few seconds from the quick lap times. That time by for Dan Morera, it looks like a little bit slower than his competition. Coming off again, Morera at the line. It's still 3.5 seconds up on Patrick Zilvazi here. I don't expect him to have what it takes to pull full speed laps and try to track down Kraus, but instead just trying to save and conserve for a podium might be the end goal. Julian right now going to be fourth, and of course all eyes on a podium for the number 11 crew, but it comes down to the driver ahead now, and of course his run at the mercy of the field and them all still trying to save tires. Most of these guys have gone in for pit road. Dan Ench most recently went in and is now back on the way, and of course Liam O'Sullivan still going to have to make his choice, and this time by O'Sullivan getting right by the front straight again. 11 laps to go, down to 11th here, and Liam still trying to make that top 10 run work out. He's going to have to be on the bottom looking up as he tries to climb back high.
Just to kind of level set the strategy here for Kraus and Morera, Morera has committed to an industrial stop. He pit way too early to put these reds on to even imagine saving enough to make it to the end. Kraus, if he backs down the pace and makes the fuel maps right, he might be able to save enough fuel and nurse it home without pitting again. He would need to give up a lot of track time, but he has almost 11.5 seconds over Silvazzi in second. He may be able to clutch and coast around this track and squeeze out that extra lap and a half or 2 laps of fuel, but Morera will not be able to do that.
Now, if you're right on board here with Kraus and you mentioned clutching and coasting and all that has to be done here for fuel saving, why is he not backing down the pace right now with such an advantage here? Nearly 12 full seconds on Patrick Silvazzi, and there's going to be 10 laps to go this time by. Backing it down more than a second a lap wouldn't be the worst of choices, I would figure, based on the numbers here. Wouldn't it be in Kraus's best interest to lay back on the pedal and just try to get things to go conservatively?
If he knows he's not going to make it, he may as well push and stop for a splash of gas. It will take 30 seconds to get down pit road. If you were 15 seconds ahead, you're going to be 15 seconds behind when you're done with the stop. That would put him right around where Craig... Oh, hold on, my bad. I'm trying to get... that would put him around Mark Murphy. So he'd be battling realistically for 7th. Versus running out on the last lap, you don't finish the race, right? So if you're thinking about championship points and putting yourself in the best position to succeed, it'd be about building the biggest gap you can and not risking running out.
Let's see right now whether or not it's going to be worth it to build that gap, as it looks like Dan Morera is going to go down and in, swallowing himself up, now down into 11th, which will give once again the battle for the remainder of the podium back to Zilvazzi and Julian Altena exclusively. They'll be going at it for second from here. Craig Forsyth now going to be fourth, and so on and so forth. The rest of the field on the lead lap gets bumped up one position. Dan Ench, the lapper, once again going to be in frame. Looks like Gary Lovern and Sheridan Wade are going to be slowing down profusely, although it doesn't look like damage for Wade. Lovern is going to make his way down and in, now 1 lap down. Got a total now of 7 drivers off the lead lap, going from Dan Ench onward. Matthias Strauss and Aiden Millward, the only drivers to be out of the cockpits today. Strauss, damage from an incident. Aiden Millward, hardware disconnection and hardware failure. That's what ended his race, and everyone else has stayed alive. A few drivers losing it on pace, and of course, now several laps down, but otherwise everyone's been able to survive what's been overall a thriller here with 9 laps to go. The question becomes now, Matthias Kraus and his fuel strategy, saving versus losing everything. It's all down to this number 39, up and ahead by a long, long margin. And Patrick Zilvazzi, who's been more careful and saving thoroughly, and he, of course, find the benefits of all the saving he's done and get back to the lead before time is called and the checkered flag drops. 9 to go, coming to 8 here, and as the battles are simmering down up in front, got a few others that are still going here. A few seconds separating guys like Liam O'Sullivan, John Christensen, and Cody Meadows. Meadows, as a matter of fact, just went down to pit road, so Cody goes in for an additional stop, and it looks like that aggressive strategy has indeed pushed back on Cody as he drops now outside of the top 10 into 11th and gives everyone else in the top 10 1 spot extra.
The driver who I think also has a very good shot at making it on fuel, although they did not complete the requisite laps on the first stint, is Hugo Galez. He last pit on lap 24, which means if he goes 14 laps here, which you've seen many drivers do, he will be able to complete the race without stopping again. That would, I believe, put him in the conversation to sneak out a podium, especially if Kraus cannot make it on fuel. And then, I guess Silvazzi, Altena, and Forsyth are all good in front of him, but he's on the tailgate of Forsyth.
And Hugo Galez is not a driver at all. We mentioned, of course, contention for a top 3, but he's there, as you mentioned, right behind Craig Forsyth here, Kyle. And it's not necessarily a surprise he's been running solid with respect to his strategy, but all of a sudden, he is there right behind the number 27. Talking about his ups and downs today, started in 10th, was as high as 4th previously, now finds himself in position number 5, so overall, a net gain of 5 positions on the day. Galez has been on the up and up and has made this day overall a positive for the team. Now, is it possible for him to go back to his highest spot he's been in all race long and get by Craig Forsyth? That is still up in the air. Talking about push-to-passes, now some drivers may be using them a little bit more. The driver who's used it the most so far today, Cameron Bouchton, who has used it now a total of 8 times and comes down to pit road yet again. It looks like a little bit more of a gas guzzler today in that number 86. Talking about drivers who have not used it at all. Well, let's talk about those numbers. It looks like so far, Galez is one of the drivers who's not once touched it and currently finds himself with all 10 push-to-passes. Still this, of course, opportunity to use them. It's at his leisure. Will he choose to? Still remains the big question.
I don't think he will. I think he's going to do what he can to get the best economy towards the end of this race. And guess who's up to 7th? Liam O'Sullivan passes John Christensen here in the closing laps to move himself back into a solid top 10 position.
And so now firmly going to be up, maybe not where you'd like to be in the top 5, but Liam O'Sullivan, the recovery race has been a substantial effort. From as low as 18th and last, O'Sullivan now finds himself scored in net 6th. How about that for O'Sullivan? This has not been an easy race by any means, and to recover to that many positions and only 1 spot behind where he finished last season despite the trials and tribulations. It's a very impressive drive, of course, and maybe would have had an opportunity to get a few better, of course, if he wasn't involved in that first lap trouble. And yet, he's here, up at the front, and 6th is not a bad spot to be at all, especially given how far he had to come from behind. More than 40 seconds back on the leader to start. He's made 20-odd seconds, of course, back on the rest of his competitors. Still 50-some behind Matthias Kraus, but overall, he's gained big to get to this point, and John Christensen will come down and into pit road, this time by for his final stop.
A lot of those 50 seconds is the additional pit stop he took. So really, he's only 20 seconds back from Kraus, right? As he's 15 seconds ahead of Silvazzi and Altena. And Altena has reeled in Silvazzi. We're going to have a real fight here for what I believe will be the race win.
Now looking aboard with Julian Altena, looking for redemption in multiple ways. His teammate wrecking out early, although he's made a fantastic recovery. O'Sullivan no longer in the picture for the race win. Last season was one of the winning contenders based on the qualifying speed he had. Grabbed the pole, locked it up into the first lap, and there went his race. This season, he has not made a mistake. There have been no hiccups, and now it's time to try to charge back on the ever-conservative Patrick Silvazzi. Silvazzi's been looking for the opportunity all race long, of course, to break away from Julian. Hasn't gotten it yet. Now going to be a half a second away with 6 laps to go, and the final stretch is here. Kraus is up and ahead, far and away with a 15-plus second lead, and I think all sights are set for Kraus to push hard to try and coast his way to the checkered flag. But now, 2nd and 3rd continue battling, and this could be a win, as you mentioned, Kyle, and they will still keep on. The fight remains in the final laps here in Road America.
I'm really interested to see how long Kraus runs out this fuel tank to keep us guessing. He's right behind Cameron Bouchton right now. It's possible he could be saving a lot in the draft of Cameron. I don't think it's likely he'll make it to the end, but if he does, he'll make me look like an idiot.
Well, it looks like a little bit of that lap traffic help, and he shouldn't be in a rush to pass Cameron. unless, of course, he's really dead set and just trying to build that lead and get lucky. But I think right now, this could be the saving grace. Cameron right now running at a respectable pace, and it doesn't look like it's going to lose him all too much. So staying in the toe of a driver who's definitely had a few more struggles today, but is now on new rubber, not a bad place to be. And I think it's going to be, of course, Kraus taking advantage of the situation and now just going to run in line at a speed of about 180 plus. The toe is definitely going to help, but Cameron's off the track, and there goes the assistance. In just a few turns time, Kraus is going to have to make that pass.
Yeah, to me, that's a pretty clear signal that Kraus knows he's not going to make it. If I were him and I were trying to save, I would let Bauschen gather it back up and stick right behind him for this very long straightaway. Save every percentage point of fuel that I can for my miles per gallon.
5 laps to go, and if it isn't clear enough, the signals are there. Kraus is in danger. 5 laps remaining here, and he has been pushing like nobody else has all race long. Now finds himself, of course, running in the confines of the race lead alone, but that could change. Liam O'Sullivan is going to get into a battle here with Dan Morera, and this is to finish off the top 5. Liam has made his way within a second of the number 40 machine. However, the job is not done. Right now, it's going to be, of course, the 40 Racewear number 40 that has the overall cut and clear advantage in terms of track position, but things could change as, of course, Liam O'Sullivan has made his way back up. Now his sights are set in the top 5 finish. It's realistically possible. He's just got to keep on pulling through, as next time by will be 4 laps remaining. Kraus is due to eventually come down to pit road based on what we're looking at, and Liam O'Sullivan far out of the way, fighting his own with Dan Morera. Craig Forsyth lonely and out of the race winning battle. It leaves these two, Julian Altena, Patrick Zovazzi. Does Julian have what it takes to gain just a little bit more, or is it not enough? Keep in mind, Julian has used 4 push-to-passes so far, whereas Zovazzi has not used 1. Maybe Julian could be a little more aggressive, but also Zovazzi would have the opportunity to counteract it with more push-to-passes still stored if it comes down to that.
If Altena is smart, he'll know that he can save 3 or 4 push-to-passes to use in 1 lap and not give Silvazzi the opportunity to fight back. It is incredibly difficult to pass on the backstretch past the kink into Canada corner. If you can pass him before that point and then defend for the remainder of the lap, I think you've set yourself up perfectly to win this race.
Coming across the stripe again here, still going to be lying back Julian, still remaining with 6 push-to-passes in store. Now, 18.5 second lead for Matthias Kraus. He's far and ahead, advantageous, and it looks like right now that has been the priority, just keeping himself out in the way, nobody else there with them. However, going to be slow and alone now, getting away from Cameron Bauschen. 9 drivers left on the lead lap, and the next he would have to come up on is John Christensen. And Christensen's not in frame, though, and still finds himself far and ahead from your race leader. There's no helping right now for Kraus. He's out and alone. If it comes down to it, he could save fuel, but it still looks unlikely he's going to go the full distance. A top 10 is effectively guaranteed. A top 5 is almost effectively guaranteed. But Kraus right now is risking it to go for that race win, and we'll see how much longer he dedicates himself to such a strategy. Half a second still between Patrick Zovazzi and Julian Altena, but nobody's made a move just yet, and they've stayed right around each other, hovering with no sign of full-on aggression.
So this is kind of what Altena did on the first stint, and it was behind Silvazzi then too. However, Silvazzi was on the primary tire, but Altena was on the alternate. So Altena knows what to expect on these low life red tires, battling for spots. He had done it with Altena and Millward early in the race, and it looks like he'll be able to use that experience here, whereas Silvazzi's generally had a clear windshield. I'm expecting Altena to make a move probably on the last lap. However, it's all picturesque and perfect to do it on your last lap and make it so they can't build the defense, but a race car driver will take the first opening he sees. I would anticipate Julian to pounce on a mistake if Silvazzi makes one, but Silvazzi hasn't all day long.
And now looking aboard with Julian at a speed of 182 miles an hour out of the front straight into turn 1. Can't go for the move there. He stays right behind. Keep in mind, Kraus is in. So Matthias Kraus is going to forfeit the race lead and pull himself down a pit road. He'll cycle out at a about the 4th position. There he is. Kraus is back on the way, just outside the podium. That will gift Craig Forsyth 3rd. This is the fight for the race win, and now side by side, Julian gonna take it low and force himself to the bottom, hoping to push Kraus, of course, out of the way. He did. Now Zovazzi maybe getting pushed physically off the track. It's gonna be wheel to wheel. Patrick Zovazzi has to give Julian to the race lead with 3 laps to go. He found the opportunity, and now he finds the top position for the first time all race long.
And this is where Zovazzi will get to use that push-to-pass advantage he's built up. It's so powerful to use all the way down the backstretch here to Canada. You go about a second a lap faster, especially if there's someone giving you tow. They're both good on gas. Now we'll see who's got the more tire underneath them and who's got the biggest amount of bravery.
And it's all going to come down to that trust in the car. Confidence is everything here with 3 laps remaining. The 40 Racewear Grand Prix comes down to 2 of the best drivers all day long who have made the strategy play out almost perfect here. They've been consistent in regard to their fuel stints. And now they're here. 3 laps remaining, coming down to 2, and it's going to be popsicle sticks this time by 2 laps left. Altena up in front by 4/10 of a second. Julian looking for an opportunity to win for the first time in a season and a half. Patrick Zovazzi last season got his first ever career podium in the INDYCAR Series, and now he's looking for what could be his first ever win. We knew we were guaranteed a first-time winner this season coming in, but now it's 2 of our veterans here who have made it look easy all night long, but only one can win, and in all honesty, Julian is getting away now.
I think he did a really good job of conserving his reds. Like I said, having that run earlier in the race with the experience to know how they're going to act, how they're going to react to being under stress and being under temperature and being in traffic gave him a huge leg up here in this final run over Patrick Zovazzi.
And now taking that advantage and using it with his own 0.8 of a second behind Patrick Zovazzi, slowly but surely falling a little bit further back than he'd like, and I think that might be the final nail in the coffin here. Patrick going to be alone for second. Another battle once again continuing. Liam O'Sullivan way wide on Dan Morera, but he will take 5th, only to lose it again. A little bit of a bobble. Morera's off the track. Dan Morera's going to give up a top 5 run. He should be good to continue, but much like O'Sullivan at the start, he has lost a part of his wing. The right front is gone.
I believe he has enough of a gap on Hugo Galez to where he will nurse this car home to 6th place finish. He is my hero for a reason. Dan Morera and that 4D Racewear machine is going to bring it home in 6th. Hard fought and well earned. One little mistake there going wheel to wheel with O'Sullivan, who's obviously been seeing red all race long. But O'Sullivan will come home with a top 5 after losing a wing on the first lap.
And all of a sudden looking to be one of the best days that this Altena Autosport has seen in quite a long while. This Altena Autosport team, as we mentioned, they started up at the front of the field, 2nd and 3rd. O'Sullivan had to make his way all the way back up to the top 5, but it looks like Zovazzi's got one final charge. Less than a half second now, less than 0.3 of a second. Zovazzi is in hot pursuit and now finds himself within striking distance. If there's one more opportunity to lay down the push to pass, he will use it, and this time around it'll be Zovazzi seeing green on the dashboard as you look aboard now with the number 17. The final chances are now here, and it will be time in the final sector for Zovazzi to put it together. If there's any chance to swap for the race lead, Patrick puts on the power, and it's going to be Altena now parking it right through the corner, trying to use that optimal groove to hold the apex. And here comes Zovazzi, looking a little bit high. Defense once again from Altena, exceptional, and he's kept himself right ahead, but there's nothing you can do down one of the fastest portions of the circuit. Now, it's going to be Zovazzi pulling high and wide with Altena down low. Julian remains advantageous, but just enough to hold on one more time doesn't mean Patrick's done. Stays right on the attenuator to go as high as he can through the curbs, using them once more. Now the uphill ascent. Alternate advantageous, but Silvazzi right behind. He'll choose to get back on the push to pass as they weave and bob once and twice. A drag race across the stripe is no use. Julian Altena will win in Road America. Redemption from last season and a double top 5 for the team VOR. Altena is your race winner in the 40 Racewear Grand Prix. What a fight between your top 2 drivers. Silvazzi gave it everything he had and comes up so short, of course, being so close.
1 car length. What a finish. What a race. Patrick actually cooled his reds off to make that last final attack. Getting out of the dirty air for a lap or two, just let him come back to temp to build up that last final push to the finish. If he had been a little bolder, a little braver, and maybe come to blows with Altena, the outcome would have been different, and we'd have Craig Forsyth in victory lane. However, what a race. That was exhilarating.
Does Julian have enough to even go around for a burnout here? Looks like he's back on the way.
Probably.
Looks like just enough to do so. So Altena looking to celebrate. What a race that was, and the road courses never disappoint. Road America, one of our most exciting on the schedule, and it proves all the same today in Elkhart Lake. Julian gonna back it down once again, and he's gonna stop the celebration on the track. What a way to win. Altena winning from Patrick Silvazzi second, Craig Forsyth third, and Matthias Kraus position number 4. Liam O'Sullivan then and there rounds out the top 5 with Hugo Gallas in 6th, Cody Meadows in 7th, and then 8th, John Christensen. Dan Morera not able to make much happen after, of course, that major incident at the end. 9th place, and Cameron Baustin then going to be in 10th with the 11th place then and there held by Dan Ench. 12th is Sheridan Wade, 13th Jordan Evans, and then Nate Fields 14th with Mark Murphy 15th. 16th place, Gary Lovern. Aiden Moore and Matthias Strauss, your only 2 retirees on the day. And I think, Kyle, it's about time we get a word from all of your top 3 drivers in tonight's event. And we'll find, of course, your race winner, Julian Altena, standing by momentarily. A front row start leading to a top spot finish. And a matter of fact, right now, we do not see Julian available. We do see our 2nd and 3rd place drivers, though. So how's about we get a word with the drivers we have and go from the bottom on up? Craig Forsyth going to be standing by right now, the number 99, Kyle. Let's bring in your 3rd place finisher.
Hey, Craig, way to wheel that thing to a 3rd place finish, getting the most out of your gas tank. And happy Canada Week for you guys up there. This is kind of a home track for you guys. So your independence and our independence both celebrated this week. Tell us about your race and how you brought it home 3rd.
Yeah, thanks. No, yeah, without a Montreal or a Mosport, I'll take Road America anytime. No, I love this track. So, I mean, I knew I wasn't the fastest here, so we were gonna have to make something different happen, which was the fuel save. And I wasn't even sure if we could make the fuel save, because I'm not the best at fuel saving, but we got lucky on the first stint. I was able to just sort of sit at the back of all those guys and follow them around. I mean, boy, Julian and Patrick, I mean, those guys are, at the front still, saving fuel at the front is just something I'm not capable of doing. That's impressive for them. So we were able to, drag it out, make 13 laps for both the first and second stint, so that we could go what I thought it was going to be 11 laps, and then I realized no, it's 12 laps I needed to go. So I had to change things up a bit there on the final stint and make sure that I was using the right fuel maps. And as it was, I barely made it across the line ahead of Matthias there. I mean, he was charging up through those last couple laps there. So good on him for just realizing that without doing the fuel save, he was going to have to just go for it at the end, and he sure did. He was right on our backside when we crossed the line there.
Well, way to stay cool and bring it home in 3rd. Any sponsors, friends, family shout outs you have?
Yeah, I got to thank the 40 Racewear guys. I mean, this is their race, so being on the podium for Jim's 40 Racewear team on the race he sponsored for the season is a good result for us. We will definitely take it. Yeah, feel sorry for Aiden. He said his wheel disconnected there I guess when he was going into the braking. It was just we got lucky. That the three of us that were in front of or behind him there were all able to get by without anything happening. And I mean, traffic here, everyone was nice and respectable for us, so we didn't have any problems with the traffic. It was a good race, and we really enjoyed it. So thanks to the whole VOR crew and you guys for broadcasting the race.
Much appreciated. Congratulations. You've earned it. Go ahead and celebrate. And thanks for your time.
Thank you. Have a good day. Stay safe.
And so on the move, that is Craig Forsyth, who comes through with a top 3 finish today. Still no word from Julian, so with that being said, Kyle, we're going to move up and take on our second place finisher here, Patrick Zilvazzi, going to be standing by with you.
Hey, Patrick, congratulations on the silver medal today. You hard fought, just one car length short to pass Julian there at the end. Anything you could have done differently or anywhere you could have been a little braver to maybe change the outcome?
Maybe to send it on the last corner. And yeah, basically that's why I thought I can make it with the drag race, but I didn't at the end. It's okay. I tried.
Not only did you try, you gave us a great show. I want to know how you were able to save so much fuel going so fast in the lead on the first stint. You weren't drafting behind anyone. You were putting down really good lap times, and you still made it the full 13 laps required to make it a 2-stop race. Any secrets you want to share?
I don't know. I was always good at fuel saving, so I don't know if it's a secret or not. But yeah, I knew it has to be a 2-stopper, even though I had to do a full stint on the reds, which I didn't really look forward to, but because how the tire fall off is on the reds around here. So, but actually, on the last stint, I was rather saving tires than fuel. I was actually saving a little bit of fuel as well, but I had a little bit of an extra.
Yeah, was that extra fuel to maybe use the push to pass if needed? It looked like you were on the button a lot there at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, last 2 laps I was on the button. Yeah, I didn't use the basically for 36 laps because I thought that there is no point to use it.
Well, you did really well, all things considered. Any friends, family, sponsors, or shout-outs you'd like to give?
Yeah, thank you everyone for TWR for still believing me, even though I didn't win. But this is literally the closest attempt to get the win. But maybe next time. But I mean, getting on the podium with like zero motivation to do iRacing in general and do minimum prep is So I'm actually happy for this result.
When you got it, you got it. Hopefully this will spark a little fire in you, and we'll see you not only here, but in the Iconic Series continuing to tear it up. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much.
On second place.
Thank you so much.
With that being said, Patrick Zilvazzi going to be on the way, and unfortunately a driver that we have not yet gotten the word from, race winner Julian Altena. However, I think there's one other driver we'd love to speak to who didn't end up on the podium today, but had one of the most impressive drives on this track. Liam O'Sullivan, certainly it was a come-from-behind race after that first lap, and pulling through with a top 5 finish, one of the most impressive runs from top to bottom on the circuit. A top 5, we didn't know it would be possible to get a top 10 out of it, and yet you pull through and find yourself 5th at the checkered flag.
I mean, I wasn't really expecting an interview. I was just speaking to Craig, but anyway. Yeah, the only way I managed that was because so many people did a free stop. I'm gonna say it's my fault, but Patrick, like, it's a racing incident. I got caught out by him under braking. He lifted off, like, I know it's lap 1, turn 1, and I thought I was being careful. He just completely caught me out. But yeah, it was a kind of limit the damage as much as possible. And I don't think I could have got much further up the field. I mean, Craig was 20 odd seconds ahead, but yeah, it was a frustrating but good race. I mean, the pace was clearly there to be up front. I mean, like especially like going so slow on that fuel save strategy. But yeah, it was a good damage limitation race.
And damage limitation, exactly what it turned out to be. And tonight, big on that pit strategy. You went down a pit road earlier than anyone else, of course, which we recognized, and then you went from there, getting 2 additional pit stops. So you went for the 3-stopper, but a little bit differently. How was it that you managed those runs in regards to the fuel strategy and the tire wear to get yourself up there and continue making spots?
Yeah, when I had no front wing, I knew it was just changing it. So I was losing 10 seconds a lap without front wing. So I knew that, right, I need to get it to lap 2 to limit myself doing 13 laps to give myself a more favourable fuel number compared to everybody else. And then hope everyone else was, like most people, weren't going to do the 2-stop, which ended up happening, even though the 2-stop was the better strategy as we kind of calculated. But yeah, it was kind of part luck due to that, but yeah, working out that I had to get it to lap 2, try and stay out of trouble while driving around at the front of the field and falling backwards without a front wing, and bringing it home in a good points position.
And salvaging points, making your way back up in the top 5, Liam O'Sullivan. Same position you had at this track last season, but a completely different route to get there. And with that being said, if you have any final shout-outs you'd like to make, the floor is yours.
Shout out to mum, dad, granddad all watching. Hopefully I made an entertaining race out of it. England for advancing to the semi-finals of the Euros, because I've run out of people to thank now. Yeah, and see everyone at Iowa.
You have a team to thank as well, Liam.
And Old Tenor was. Yeah,
it's not a problem, Liam.
They're included. I need to get the script. 4D Racewear for sponsoring the race. Yeah, and Alzheimer's Association for supporting the first couple of rounds we had.
There's one more, Liam. One more.
I can't think of any more.
IFS Personal Financial Planning.
Yeah, that as well.
Well, there we have it, Liam. It looks like Knight coming home with a top 5, and we thank you for your time again.
Yep, thanks, guys.
And we mentioned the team Altena Autosport converting for a double top 5, and we've got our race winner, Julian. You're with us now. What a way it was to win, of course. Last season, you grabbed the pole, but didn't have much success after. Redemption, and you had to fight for it this time by.
Yeah, last season was definitely a skill issue thing for sure. Just happy that I could pull it off this time around. I was trying to stay patient as best as I could, and then got passed by 2 guys and lost some time there. And then Aiden didn't have the pace to keep up at some stage, so I had to close that gap back down. And then later on in the stint, Aiden lost it in front of me, and then I had to make up another 3 seconds or so, and I couldn't do it. Usefully anyway. So I was quite a bit short on the fuel, which you probably saw. I had to save a lot of fuel on the last 2 laps of the stint to make it on the same number. And then thankfully Patrick came to me, and I was able to pass him with 2 laps to go pretty much. Yeah, it was, from my side anyway, it was a pretty boring race. I'm not going to lie. Like, the end was very exciting, but everything else was just super boring. But yeah, that's just the way Road America goes most of the time with the fuel saving and stuff. So yeah, that's just the way it goes. But I'm happy to come away with a win. So yeah, that's it.
And
I have
you
a
mentioned,
question, Julian. Did you? Oh, sorry, David.
you got it, Kyle. No worries.
Did you find the experience from the red tires on the first stint in traffic and while saving, having them hot, put you in a position to capitalize on Patrick and at the end of the race?
I mean, maybe subconsciously, but yeah, the way I think about it is it wouldn't really make a difference because I drive this car every day, so I guess I know how it feels, which sounds really, I mean, I guess arrogant in a way, but no, but it is true. Like, I drive this car pretty much every day when I'm on the sim anyway. So yeah, kind of going in, you know what the car is going to handle. Like, I showed up to practice. Some other people didn't, which showed, but yeah, I knew how I was going to handle. So starting on the reds didn't really make much of a difference. It wasn't even my plan to do it. Like, I selected the primaries, and it still gave me the ultimates for some reason. So I was a bit annoyed at the start, but it all worked out because it was going to be a fuel safe race anyway, so it didn't really matter all that much. I just wanted to keep the tires in a good window, which I did. So that's why I guess I stayed on top at the end as well because I kept myself in it by making that mistake on the first stint, which actually affected the first two stints. So I would say I was pretty disadvantaged on the first 2/3 of the race, but yeah, to go back to the question though, I knew what I was going to do anyway, so it didn't really matter too much if I started on reds or blacks. It was always the plan to go that route. So yeah.
Coming out on top with your first win of the season here, so some momentum in mind with the future races coming up next. And let's talk a little bit about that schedule we got here. Of course, getting your first win at the first road course. And up next, when we go racing again, it will be Iowa. So back to those left turns and a much shorter track. It's a completely different style of racing. What's it going to take for you to take this momentum and convert it again for what could be another opportunity for win number 2?
Talent is going to be the biggest thing because I believe all the guys that showed up from the last 2 ovals, they will be back again next week or 2 weeks from now for Iowa. So it's going to be a very big challenge. Iowa is always a tough track as well to pass on and also save your tires because it's going to be a daytime race too. So taking care of the tires is going to be a very important thing, especially in traffic. So we'll see what's going to happen there. I'm not going to put in any predictions or anything because I honestly really don't know. From the race that we did in IAS, it was an open setup race though. We had pretty good cars and I ran strong there. So from that perspective, I guess we'll do all right as a team also. But yeah, of course, this being fixed setups, it's hard to really say where you are until you really get there and get laps on the board in practice and before the race. So I'm expecting all the good guys to return, like Andreas, Jesper, those guys, and Seb, of course, as well. They swept the podium the last 2 races. Hopefully, we can get there as well with our team on that podium without finishing behind an IAR car for a change. But yeah, Iowa's going to be a completely different ball game. So I'm not really putting any expectations on it. I hope to be at the front, but yeah, not predicting anything.
Well, Julian, we'll see what comes out of it come next race in Iowa. But tonight, victory lane in the first road course race of the season. If you have anyone else you'd like to shout out in particular, we'd love to hear it. The floor is yours.
Yeah, of course, 40 Racewear for sponsoring the race today. You can check them out at 40racewear.com for their custom racing shoes and apparel for sim racing. Alexander Boni from IFS Personal Financial Planning. He helps you plan your financing, and you can email him at alex@ifspfp.com. And then, of course, also Dan Enge, who is raising awareness for the Alzheimer's Association. You can visit alz.org for more information on Alzheimer's disease and also the option to donate for research against Alzheimer's and other dementia. It's a very good cause. We've been supporting it a lot this season, so definitely go check them out. Of course, donating is completely optional. You don't have to do it. But if you have a few dollars to spare, then please consider doing so. And you can also find more information about caretaking for patients with Alzheimer's disease as well. I should probably add that. So for research, the option to donate and more information, you can check out alz.org. I want to thank you guys for broadcasting. Cal, for you coming in last minute. I know you had some things planned originally, but glad you could be here anyway. Want to say sorry to my girlfriend because I was supposed to go there tonight, but I just missed the train, and that's why I was so late for the interview as well. So I'll see you tomorrow. And everybody else that showed up today as well, and of course the team. I actually I completely forgot. I really need to be shamed for this. All the Altena Autosport guys as well for working together and always working on the strategy, especially to Liam. He really did the main part of the numbers for this race, so thanks to him especially, but also everybody else. Yeah, to come back on the field, everybody else. Overall, was a pretty solid race on the road courses. There might be some new rules that need to be implemented in terms of pure speed because it was kind of. I mean, there were a few weapons out there with lap cars. Let's just keep it at that. But yeah, we'll look into that and then see what happens there going forward. But as for the race itself, it was pretty solid, so can't really complain. That's it, I think. So. Yeah, thanks everybody again, and see you for the next race at Iowa.
And there we have it, coming home on top here from the Virtual Road America. Julian Altena, thank you for your time.
You got it, man. See ya.
And now that we've gotten the word here from all of our top 3 of the night's event, Kyle, we've seen it from, of course, the perspective of a race winner, second, third, and of course, Liam O'Sullivan with that huge comeback drive. Now, of course, we're going to have to wrap things up. And before we do, you got any final thoughts regarding this race?
I'm just glad it was a fun and strategy-filled afternoon. The 3-stop was only half a second off from the podium, right? That's always cool to see that you can take either a 2-stop or a 3-stop approach and end up pretty much in the same spot. I also would like to thank everybody who tuned in to make this series successful. It's always great to have an active chat and to have people watching here on the VOR channel. That's awesome. I love being here, love being a part of this broadcast team. So thank you so much for having me today, David.
It's been fantastic having you aboard, Kyle, and once again, for those who want to tune in for our future races, we've got quite a lot coming. Up next on the INDYCAR Series, we've got, of course, Iowa Speedway. Going back to the ovals, where maybe defending oval winner Jesper Wernemann can go for 3 consecutive on the left turn tracks. And the Iconic Series, they've got themselves a lot of action coming up next, and on their schedule, you'll be seeing Iowa as well. Very similar with respect, of course, to the schedule. So an Iowa doubleheader coming up in a weekend's time, and we hope you see us there on the VOR Racing Network as well. It's been a pleasure calling the action. I've been David Croyt, joined today by Kyle Clenworth, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's presentation. If you did, make sure to leave a like on the stream and subscribe to the channel, and of course, check out future races. We'd love to have you back for our next racing action at the virtual Iowa Speedway. This has been a presentation of the 4D Racewear Grand Prix for the virtual Road America. You're watching the VOR INDYCAR Series Round 3 of 14 in the season, and we hope you tune in for Round 4 at Iowa. Thank you all for watching tonight's presentation, and we hope you have a fantastic night.